Hey everybody, Greg and Chastity here. Now, Star Trek Discovery just wrapped up its third season. Now, before we head into season 4, we thought this would be a great time to travel back to where it all began by taking a look at the full Discovery timeline.
From the Mirror Universe to the Constitution-class USS Enterprise, all the way to the 32nd century, let's take a look back at all the most important star dates in Star Trek Discovery.
Warning, there are spoilers all the way up to Discovery's third season. Now, let's fly. If you're a bit confused about when exactly Discovery takes place, we got you covered with a breakdown of what we know so far and how it all changed in the third season.
For perspective, let's start with a basic outline of all the Trek series and where they stand in the timeline when it comes to Discovery's first 2 seasons. The first episode of Star Trek Discovery takes place in 2255. That's a decade before the events of the original series, 110 years before the events of The Next Generation, and around 100 years after the events of Enterprise. Let's take a look at the full breakdown.
In 2151 to 2161, that's when we got the events in Star Trek Enterprise.
In 2254, that's when we got the original unaired Star Trek pilot.
Now, the events of Star Trek Discovery Seasons 1 and 2 take place in 2255 to 2259.
Star Trek the original series takes place from 2265 to 2269.
And the animated series takes place in 2269 to 2270.
Next, from 2273 to 2293, we have the original Star Trek movies.
And from there, we head into The Next Generation from 2364 to 2370.
Overlapping around the end is Star Trek Deep Space Nine from 2369 to 2375.
Star Trek Voyager also overlaps DS9 from the years 2371 to 2378.
Star Trek Lower Decks takes place in 2380.
And Star Trek Picard takes place in 2399.
And at the end of Discovery Season 2, everything changes as Burnham leads Discovery through a wormhole and they travel 930 and 931 years into the future to a freshly undiscovered part of the Trek timeline. This places them in the 32nd century for Discovery Season 3. Michael arrives in 3188 and spends a year in this new timeline without her crewmates before they arrive in 3189.
Just before the events on Discovery, there were a few major events that transpired. In 2249, Michael Burnham graduated from the Vulcan Science Academy and began her 7-year service aboard the USS Shenzhou under Captain Philippa Georgiou.
In 2250, after a refit, the USS Enterprise was launched on a second 5-year mission, led by Captain Christopher Pike.
And in 2254, the events of the Cage transpired, where the Enterprise investigates a distress call from Talos 4. Captain Pike is captured and tested by the Talosians, who can project powerful, realistic illusions.
In the years 2256 to 2257, the events of Star Trek Discovery Season 1 take place. In May, on Stardate 1207.3, the USS Shenzhou encounters an object of unknown origin, putting First Officer Michael Burnham in the middle of a conflict with a Klingon. When trying to escape, she accidentally kills him, and this leads to an imminent conflict with the Federation and the Klingon faction led by T'Kuvma. This follows with Burnham attempting a mutiny against Captain Philippa Georgiou in the hopes of defusing the crisis. She fails, and the Battle of the Binary Stars occurs between Starfleet and the Klingons, killing Captain Georgiou and T'Kuvma in the process.
After the battle, Burnham is found guilty of mutiny, stripped of her rank, and sentenced to a life of imprisonment. Meanwhile, the Klingon torchbearer Voq attempts to continue T'Kuvma's dream, but is quickly dismissed by the Klingon Empire. In June, the USS Buran is ambushed and all hands except for Captain Gabriel Lorca are lost. Now, Lorca has been replaced by his Mirror Universe counterpart, but we'll get back to that later. And in November, after being diverted from transfer to the Telin prison colony, Michael Burnham finds herself on the USS Discovery. While on board, Burnham meets Lorca and learns what the Federation is doing in their battle against the Klingons.
We're not creating a new way to kill. We are creating a new way to fly.
Lorca sends Burnham on an away mission with Sylvia Tilly and Paul Stamets to investigate the USS Glenn after a failed test of the Glenn's experimental spore drive kills the entire crew. Here, a group of Klingons try to take advantage of the disabled ship but are killed by the tardigrade on board. The Disco team under Lorca's order would recover the tardigrade Ripper and use it to upgrade the Discovery's spore drive. Afterwards, Burnham joins the crew of the Discovery long term. With the new and improved spore drive, Lorca leads Discovery to victory, wiping out dozens of Klingon ships during their attack on Corvan II.
Meanwhile, Voq is overthrown by Cole and subsequently abandoned aboard the wreck of the USS Shenzhou, but he's rescued by L'Rell. And here they come up with a plan for their next steps. And in December, Lorca's captured by the Klingons on his way back from a conference. And in captivity, he encounters Starfleet Lieutenant Ash Tyler and Harry Mudd. Meanwhile, Stamets reveals that using the spore drive causes the tardigrade Ripper extreme pain, and this will lead to Burnham peacefully releasing the tardigrade from Discovery. Lorca and Tyler would team up to escape from L'Rell, leaving Mudd behind for helping the Klingons, and are beamed aboard the Discovery. And they're able to jump out of the conflict with Lieutenant Stamets now running the spore drive.
Did we make it? Yes.
In the same month, Ambassador Sarek is attacked by logic extremists on his way to a diplomatic meeting with a supposed dissenting Klingon faction. Sarek would end up stranded inside a nebula until Burnham rescues him with an unauthorized mission.
Meanwhile, Vice Admiral Katrina Cornwell goes in Sarek's place to meet with the Klingons, but is captured by them when it turns out to be a giant trap. On Stardate 2136.8 to 2137.2, Harry Mudd returns and uses a time crystal to trap Discovery inside a time loop, in an attempt to figure out the starship's secret and sell the ship to the Klingons. He fails after Stamets is able to exist outside of a loop and thwarts Mudd's plans. In the end, Mudd is handed over to his fiancée Stella and her father. At the start of the new year 2257, on Stardate 1308.9, the Discovery goes to the planet Pavo to learn the science behind the Klingons' cloaking technology. Here they end up in a head-to-head battle with the Klingons. After the ensuing conflict, Disco saves Admiral Cornwell, while Tyler and his captor, L'Rell, are reunited. In order to win a battle, Discovery makes one spore jump too many, causing damage to Stamets, and a last-minute switch by Lorca jumps the ship into a mirror universe.
Here in the mirror universe in an unknown timeline, Burnham takes her place as the Terran leader of the Shenzhou, while Tilly assumes the role of the ruthless Captain Killy of Discovery. And shortly after, we find out that, surprise, Lorca is originally from the mirror universe. Tyler learns his sleeper cell connections to the Klingon Voke, and we say goodbye to Culber, just for a moment, and Georgiou and Burnham reconnect to take down Lorca. From here, after jumping back into the time prime line in 2257, the Discovery loses 9 months, and the Klingons' advances have left the Federation in near ruin. With the help of Emperor Georgiou, Commander Saru leads the Discovery on a last-ditch mission, resulting with L'Rell taking over the Klingon Empire and the end of the Federation-Klingon War. The Discovery crew is awarded for their actions, including Saru receiving the Starfleet Medal of Honor. Shortly thereafter, still led by Saru, the Discovery heads to Vulcan to pick up the ship's new captain, but stops along the way to respond to a distress call from Captain Christopher Pike aboard the USS Enterprise.
In the years 2257 to 2258, the events of Star Trek Discovery Season 2 take place. On Stardate 1025.19, Captain Christopher Pike is sent by Starfleet to take over command of the USS Discovery under Regulation 19 Section C. Under Pike's command, the Discovery takes on a mission to investigate the significance of 7 mysterious red signals. Following the coordinates of a red signal, the crew finds the USS Hiawatha, a medical ship thought to be lost during the Federation-Klingon War. Aboard, they discover Commander Jet Reno, who has been keeping members of the crew alive. The survivors and Reno are beamed aboard Discovery.
Briefly left behind, Burnham is injured and the Red Angel appears to her. Then Pike appears and rescues Burnham. Pike tells Burnham that Spock is on leave, and Spock had run into a question that he couldn't answer. Burnham goes to investigate Spock's quarters on the Enterprise and finds that he has a map of the 7 red signals, which he had drawn from the visions he was having. On Stardate 1027.32, Pike and Burnham learn that Spock has drawn an accurate map of the red signal 2 months before they appeared, and Pike tells Burnham that Spock committed himself to the Psych unit on Starbase 5. From there, Discovery detects a second signal in the Beta Quadrant, which sends them to a Class M planet called Terralysium. A distress call has been transmitted from the surface on a loop for 200 years. However, Burnham, Pike, and Oo beam down and find it's a pre-warp planet with a small settlement called New Eden, and no signs of struggle.
The away team learns from the leader of New Eden that the first humans on Terralysium were beamed over from Earth during the Third World War and rescued by an angel. This is later shown to be the mysterious Red Angel in footage from a soldier's helmet cam. On Discovery, after being blasted by particles from the asteroid fragment sample, Tilly starts talking to a ghost of her childhood friend May Ahern. Terralysium faces an extinction-level event, but with May's help, Tilly comes up with a plan to pull radioactive particles away from the planet using the dark matter asteroid in Disco's shuttle bay. On Stardate 1029.46, Michael Burnham is visited by her adoptive mother Amanda, who tells her that Spock needs her help. He reportedly killed 3 doctors and fled the starbase and is wanted for murder.
Meanwhile, Ash Tyler learns that Voke and L'Rell have a baby. And Georgiou, now working for Section 31, shows up and convinces L'Rell that in order to keep her power as Chancellor, her child must be sent away, and Ash is to be made to look like a traitor. The child is sent to a monastery on Boreth, where he would be safe but never know his parents. Tyler stays with Georgiou and joins Section 31 on a ship led by Leland. On Discovery, it turns out Tilly sees May because she's carrying a parasite made from the fungi spore and the dark matter energy burst, which leads to Stamets extracting and containing the alien fungi.
On Stardate 1834.2512, while tracking the shuttle stolen by Spock, a mysterious organic sphere pulls Discovery in and locks it in place. The sphere is 100,000 years old. It tries to talk to Discovery using a virus. It's dying but wants to tell its story of everything it's seen before it does. The sphere was put in Discovery's mysterious path by the Red Angel, who hoped that they would keep its data safe. Saru believes the sphere has triggered Vihari, a Kelpian biological process thought to be terminal, and thinks that death is inevitable. Instead, he survives Vihari, and without his threat ganglia, he becomes fearless and feels powerful. The mycelial entity called May attaches itself to Tilly and views Stamets as a destructive alien intruder, ravaging its ecosystem during the spore drive jumps. It says it has plans for Tilly, and Tilly gets stuck inside the mycelial blob.
Next, Tilly is transported to the mycelial network where May asked her to kill a monster. And it turns out the monster is Culber, who was sent into the network by Stamets by accident. Culber's energy passed through Stamets while he was linked to the network, then the mycelial network created him with their matter. May takes Culber's DNA and adds it to the cocoon on Discovery to reform his matter. Next, Discovery tracks down Spock's shuttle, but finds Georgiou inside. Here we find out that Section 31 is hunting down Spock. Ash Tyler is a liaison for Section 31 and is assigned to stay on Discovery to work together to find Spock. On Stardate 1035.86, a new red signal brings Discovery to Saru's home world of Kaminar. Saru is reunited with his sister Sarana, and they are captured by the Ba'ul. Saru breaks free and broadcasts a signal using the frequencies in the sphere's transmissions to broadcast and speed up the biological response to the Vihari in all of the Kelpians.
As the Ba'ul threaten to wipe out the Kelpians, the Red Angel intervenes and stops them. Saru sees the angel before it disappears, and thanks to his enhanced eyesight, he can see it as a humanoid in a mechanized suit using futuristic technology. Tyler says that Control, which handles Section 31's threat assessments, is rightfully alarmed by the Red Angel, a possible time traveler with its own agenda interfering with the fates of entire species. Discovery gets caught in a rift between space and time. Pike and Ash leave in a shuttle to check out the rift.
A probe from 500 years into the future attacks the shuttle and hacks into the Starfleet database. And Commander Arium is influenced by 3 red dots after the probe hack. And it turns out that Amanda is hiding Spock in a monastery cave. He's completely lost in his thoughts, repeating the first doctrines of logic. Sarek forces Michael to turn Spock into Section 31. And Georgiou warns Michael that Leland is going to use the memory extractor on Spock, which will destroy his mind. From there, Georgiou tells Michael to attack her to escape with Spock. And Spock keeps repeating numbers which arrange backwards our coordinates to Talos 4.
Michael and Spock land on Talos 4, which Spock had last visited in 2254 during the events of The Cage. Vina, an old friend of Pike featured in The Cage, leads them to the Talosians, who help heal Spock. He's experiencing time as a fluid rather than linear construct and is at risk of losing his mind. Michael views Spock's memories and sees that he was framed for murder. At Section 31, Michael is wanted for immunity and they're hunting for Michael and Spock. Michael tells Pike that Spock is innocent and that Leland tried to rip Spock's mind apart to get his memories of the future. Reunited on Discovery, Spock and Burnham tell Pike and crew that the Angel is a human trying to change the timeline, in which all sentient life in their galaxy has been eradicated. As a new United crew harboring wanted criminals, the Discovery makes a run for it and becomes the most wanted ship in the galaxy.
And Vice Admiral Cornwell sneaks onto Discovery. Cornwell believes that Admiral Patar, Section 31, and Control have been compromised, and the threat assessment system Control relies on artificial intelligence and is not accepting her data inputs anymore. Admiral Patar has now shut Cornwell out of Control. Once the red signal appears, Patar lobbied for Starfleet to turn its decision-making over to Control. Discovery heads to Section 31's forward operation base with plans to reset Control and arrest Admiral Patar. Upon arrival, Control blocks Discovery's communications with Starfleet, and Arium, Non, and Burnham beam over to Control's data center where they discover the bodies of the real Patar and 3 other admirals.
Arium had downloaded her archived memories onto Disco and replaced them with the data from the sphere. Control wants the sphere data so it can evolve and become fully conscious. Sadly, Arium must be ejected into space or everyone will die. Arium's last words to Michael are to find Project Daedalus. Project Daedalus is a file Tilly found in Arium's system. It contains a bioneural signature of the Red Angel and reveals that it matches Michael.
Michael, it's you.
Section 31 wants to work together to build a mousetrap to capture the Red Angel, and Leland confesses to Michael that her parents worked on Project Daedalus and built the Red Angel suit, and they were killed because of him. And Spock figures out that the variance in the signal patterns is Michael, and a plan is proposed to use Michael as bait for the Red Angel to put her life at risk. So the Angel appears and saves Michael's life and is captured. And the Angel's identity is revealed, it's Michael's mother, Gabrielle. And on the Section 31 ship, the computer turns against Leland and stabs him in the eye, and he is now compromised by Control.
The Discovery crew try to delete the sphere data but are unable to. The crew sets a plan to send the suit and the sphere data flying so far into the future that Control will never get the data in order to evolve. Leland pushes Georgiou to get the sphere data and Georgiou figures out he's been compromised. Leland attempts to divert the sphere data to the Section 31 ship. The crew is forced to send the Angel suit and Dr. Burnham back into the time stream.
On stardate 1048.66, the fourth red signal appears over Boreth, where Ash and L'Rell's child is hidden. L'Rell reveals that the Boreth Monastery has been a secret spot for the time crystals, and despite the warnings, Pike volunteers to go down to the planet. There he meets Ash and L'Rell's son, Tanavik, who has aged years since time flows differently on Boreth for those who protect the time crystals, and Tanavik leads Pike to a time crystal mine. Pike touches the crystal and sees a vision of the future, where he's hit with radiation poisoning and he witnesses his inevitable future, but he won't abandon his mission.
Meanwhile, while investigating a Section 31 ship that missed a check-in, Spock and Burnham learn the hard way that Control can move from person to person now without being detected. Control has taken over a large portion of Section 31 fleet ships and threatens Discovery. The Discovery crew decide they have no choice but to destroy their own ship to keep Control from getting the sphere data. On stardate 1051.8, the Discovery crew start preparing to abandon ship. The USS Enterprise is there to help them evacuate. The auto-destruct on Discovery fails, and when they fire on the ship, the shields are raised. The sphere data has merged with Discovery and is protecting itself. Burnham believes they have to take the data out of this time so Control can never get it. Discovery has to go to the future. They plan to rebuild the time suit with Michael wearing it.
A fifth signal appears, essential personnel return to Discovery so they can jump to the new signal, with Enterprise to follow, and it brings them to Zahia. From there, Tilly's friend Queen Poe agrees to make a supernova by modifying a dilithium incubator by combining it with dark matter, and here the crew figures out that the plan is a one-way trip to the future, and members of the Discovery crew tell Burnham that they're joining her. Leland's fleet arrives and has them surrounded while the crew is rushing to finish the suit. On stardate 1201.7, Leland boards Discovery to get the sphere data, and the Klingons and Kelpians arrive to join the fight against Control. And Spock figures out that Burnham needs to go back in time to set everything in motion and create the signals. A torpedo gets lodged into the Enterprise, and Vice Admiral Cornwell sacrifices herself to save the rest of the crew.
Giorgio fights Leland and traps him in the cage for the spore drive. She magnetizes the spore cube, which kills Leland and neutralizes Control. Burnham sets coordinates for herself and Discovery to go to the Beta Quadrant 930 years into the future to meet with her mother. Burnham says she'll send the last signal through the wormhole to alert Spock that she made it safely. She takes off to the future with Discovery following her signal, and Control has been eliminated.
Back on Earth at Starfleet HQ, Tyler, Pike, Spock, and Number 1 are debriefed about the attack. They share the same story and say they saw Discovery explode. And here Spock recommends Regulation 157 Section 3. Require Starfleet officers to abstain from participating in historical events. All officers with knowledge of the events must be ordered to not speak of Discovery, its spore drive, the crew, under penalty of treason.
Next, the timeline takes us far off into a new frontier. Let's start with a galaxy-altering event, the burn. In the mid-30th century, the dilithium supply in the Milky Way galaxy began to dry up. In 3064, the KSF Kiev embarked on a mission to investigate a dilithium nursery in the Verubin Nebula. The ship would crash on, ironically, a planet composed of dilithium, Theta Zeta. Unfortunately, the Federation's rescue attempt would fail, and one of the Kiev's Kelpian crew members, Dr. Isa, was pregnant and later gave birth to Su'Kal. Su'Kal's cells merged in utero to the dilithium, developing a connection to it. Around 3069, Su'Kal's trauma from watching his mother die of radiation poisoning resulted in an emotional outburst that caused a subspace shockwave. This destabilized refined dilithium, causing it to suddenly become inert. The burn decimated countless ships and millions of lives were lost, including a major toll on the population of Trill symbionts. Following the disaster in the year 3089, the Federation was unable to determine what caused it, nor did it know if it would occur again.
Soon, planets would start to lose trust in the Federation and would leave the organization in droves, including the Vulcans and Romulans of Navarre. Fast forward to 3186, and Dr. Burnham is transported forward in time by her daughter to Esau 4. From there, she's soon transported to Navarre, where she joins the Qowat Malat. And in 3188, Michael Burnham emerges from the 23rd century and crashes on the planet Hema. She sends the Red Angel suit back through the wormhole to send the last signal to Spock at Terra Elysium in 2258, where it self-destructs. Burnham would meet Cleveland Booker and spend the next year becoming a courier, working with Book as she waits for the USS Discovery, and tracks down clues as to what happened with the burn. Around this time, the Federation, who once held 350 member worlds at its peak, had largely collapsed as a galactic superpower, only retaining around 38 member worlds. This created a vacuum of power, and a new operation began to take hold of the galaxy, the Emerald Chain. Led by an Orion woman named Osira, the Chain was a capitalist syndicate of the Orions and Andorians that controlled numerous mercantile exchanges and operated salvage yards by debt-driven forms of slave labor.
In 3189, the USS Discovery emerges from the 23rd century and reunites with Burnham. Here, Saru is officially made captain of the Discovery, and the crew starts things off with calming tensions between Wen's raiders and the United Earth Defense Force. Soon after, Saru learns that the sphere data integrated itself with the computer systems on board USS Discovery. This AI will one one day be known as Zora. Adira Tal is reconnected with their previous hosts and joins the crew of the Discovery. With Adira's help, Discovery finds Federation HQ and Admiral Charles Vance. For 3 weeks, the Discovery undergoes a retrofit that includes programmable matter and detached warp nacelles. After disobeying orders for going on a rogue mission to rescue Book and a Starfleet black box, Burnham is demoted from First Officer to Science Officer. To the shock of Admiral Vance, Tilly replaces Burnham as acting First Officer.
After going through a test from the Guardian of Forever, Georgiou says goodbye to Burnham in Discovery when the Guardian's portal sends her back to a point in time where she won't feel the effects of her temporal condition. Immediately after, Discovery and the Federation defeat Osira and the Emerald Chain. Afterwards, the crew of Discovery rescue Su'Kal, Culber, Saru, and Adira from the Kiev, and learn that it was Su'Kal who caused the burn. And from there, Saru decides to leave Starfleet to help Su'Kal build a life for himself on Kaminar. The Federation is piecing itself back together as we see leaders of the Trill and Navarre working with the Federation again. And finally, Michael Burnham is promoted to captain and officially given command of the USS Discovery.
The timeline doesn't end for the Discovery series in the 32nd century. The Short Treks episode Calypso takes place in the 33rd century, which places it at least 10 years to 110 years after the events of Season 3. Here, the Discovery has been abandoned and the AI Zora was ordered to maintain position by her previous captain. We learn that a war involving the natives of Valcor IV and the Vidraish, which is a slang term for the Federation, takes place. About 10 years into the war, a human named Kraft steals an enemy escape pod and finds himself drifting through space for about a month. Kraft is soon brought aboard the Discovery by Zora. After a few meals and dance numbers, Kraft departs for his homeworld Alcor IV. This marks the last known events in Star Trek Discovery's in-universe chronology. The only exception in the full Trek in-universe chronology is Brannon Braga's Living Witness episode of Voyager, which could be even further into the future. So that's Discovery Seasons 1 through 3, but we have more Star Trek videos on the way, so hit subscribe and don't miss out.
Let us know what you thought of the video and what other series do you want to see a timeline for? TOS? Enterprise? Let us know in the comments down below and we'll be back here very soon. Bye.